Alright, so back to this. Basically, I have a really janky, messed up, very badly implemented centipede, but let's just see it in action real quick. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, as the world goes. So, yeah, we'll just play the game for a bit. So here we have spider, if I don't die, there, 900, there's 900 distance, and then destroying an actual mushroom gives you 1 point. Hit the damn centipede, show you how that runs. There's the scorpion. Scorpion told you that's a poison. Okay. Yep, so that happens. Wonderful, right? Wonderful. Can't even shoot it. So there's round 2. And it works there. Oh, okay, so since it reached the bottom, it should start primed heads fairly soon. Just mixed in with them. There's the primed head if you saw it in the corner. This is like a death trap. Just kill myself. Yeah. There's that. Oh, to show that the high score actually works, I have P as a cheat code. Holding it down adds points, and there you have it. There's poison working. Die again. Die one more time. There you have it. Upon completing it, it inputs a new high score and literally labels it only as player 1, so PL1, which takes up the top place, which you see there. That's a new high score, and there it is. That's that. So, going back into everything, since you already know that this is extremely screwed up, but if we're going to go into it, the only real cheeky thing I've done is setting up proper way to count for when to notify the next wave. So every destroy, it notifies the wave manager that this thing is destroyed, but if it is destroyed via bullet, it sets its was shot to be true, which calls this specific function, which then does a check to see if the collection of centipede heads and bodies is completely empty, and if it is and the player is alive, call forth the next wave. Which again, we'll get to later. Here's wave stop, which works only because I'm using my really screwed up way, which involves rotation switches and movement switches, since it's all based off of multiplications of the speed times the switch, and so on and so forth. This will pause it, and upon pausing it, we also have to pause the main sprite, as well as the sound, and so on and so forth. And then, just to show, my centipede head is derived from centipede body, or centipede class, which is here, which only has these things, and I cleared out a lot of the functions in here out of pure anger, mainly because a lot of things started to not work when I tried doing final3. But yeah, so here's my read cube bullshittery, which I know you hate, but it's there. Just to show you, my body is here. So again, counted a bunch of stuff on it. But if we go to the H file, it's also derived from the same class, so they could share the same centipede pointers and use the same next and previous pointers set up within the actual centipede base class. And to show that they're both made from factories, here's the physical factory, which calls the create functions, with so on and so forth, take in the specific parameters to set up new body. Same thing with the head, except the head has a few extra functions, and having transform head for creating the splits that work some of the time. That's all I can say. It works some of the time. Either way, there's your create head, which utilizes initialize new as well as regular head, and then your transform head, which utilizes the new initialize transform mode, which takes in the queue from the one ahead of you, but still sends your old queue to the ones behind you, and so on. It's a weird flip-flopping of whose queue is who. And if you were wondering, I was building the head move state. Not building, I haven't built it, just it kept breaking on me from funny points. Whatever. So, next critter we have is the flea. To go forth with the specifics of the flea, upon getting hit once, you increase the speed, and if the life itself is 0, that's when you call death, as well as stop the noise, mark for death, and then recall spawn flea in the wave manager to see if it's possible to even spawn another flea. But I went against using spawners in that most of my critters in their initialize have a random choice for their starting spot when it's either the spider, flea, or scorpion, and in that random choice is where it'll spawn more or less, which was originally supposed to be controlled by our spawners, but I voted against that only because I wanted my wave manager to be set up in a specific way that works more or less. But yeah, upon destroy, it notifies destroy and deregisters collision. The draw function's specifically only that. The update uses a clock so that it checks every, I guess, space that it goes through to have the availability to spawn. Mushroom chance is set to 50, so you got a 50-50 chance to spawn. And it doesn't technically have to check if it could spawn there, only because that's what the standard spawn function already does of spawn mushroom at specific spot. But after you go through that clock, you reset said clock based off your speed, so that it addresses if you need to increase said speed based off of your damage. So your initial speed multiplier is 1, and it increases to 2, so the clock itself should change upon that speed increase. These are also created with factories, and the factories look as such. It again has the sound and death pointers, so that it could send out the correct command for stopping sound, starting sound, and regular score. Again, your standard factory. You saw that bad boy in action earlier. Let's check out Scorpion real quick. Again, voted against the whole choose your side thing. So here I have it does a random choice for your Y spawn up to the Y player space upper bound, which is noted here, and using the convert float to grid and grid to float function back to back will essentially snap this Y position to that specific row that you're in, and then using that you can so that sets a position that you're in, and then using a another random choose to choose left or right decides whether your direction is either negative or positive, and which side you start on, which is either the left side or right side, which is noted by total window width and this one code here, and that swaps it back and forth and sets that up, and so on and so forth. Again, everything's reported to the wave manager to check out, which is very important and very useful. The collision itself, it reports your death, reports the sound off, mark for destroy, and then it recalls the timer to reset for the actual Scorpion, which is why, again, I went against the whole spawners thing, because my wave manager takes in times to then utilize for the specific timers which call to alarms to spawn correctly. Wave stop, again, it pauses everything and sets your direction, nulls out your direction essentially. And then the actual update, I have here I have the code to check ahead by 1, so it's not using the collision with mushroom code. So essentially we create a temporary and multiply it by, or we add 1 to it, and the direction, and that's added to the actual current position, so that it checks either one ahead or one behind depending on the direction you're going through. And if it does see a physical mushroom there, it will convert it via that temporary. And then with the update, it goes through and moves your position, and off screen here is if the actual Scorpion goes off screen, these are the steps to go through for properly resetting it. So you stop the sound, mark for destroy, reset Scorpion timer. And then the actual destroy, this basically resets the sprite scale to its regular 1 positive 1, so that it looks normal, not normal, so that it can be reused properly by the factory, as well as reporting destroyed and deregistering collision. Here we have the actual factory again, standard initialization, or not initialization, my bad. Standard setup in setting the noise and sound pointers and then calling them later. Here's your whole create Scorpion, which again is normal as we've used before. And then standard terminate and destructor. Here's the recycle, is reporting the sound loop stops and goes. Okay, next one we have Spider. Spider is also somewhat of a mess. Within Spider, we are using queues again, but better than we are using it in Centipede. So here we have update, draw, destroy, initialize, collisions, or bullet. I took out collision with mushroom because I realized you wanted it to be calculated, not using the actual collision. We stop. Here is the whole movement array. I originally had something for award points in the original make, but I moved that into the factory so it works out nicer. And then these are functional. We'll see. So starting from the very top, we have setting animation, collider, and such. Here's the empty queue, which literally takes your queue and empties it. Your move up fills your queue with orders to only move up, specified by your Y position. Move down, specified only by Y position, but again positive since it's going down. diagonal up, again, it's going to be both